Today, our two speakers. First, we'll have Fran McGovern from McGovern Legal Services speaking on past COVID association collections. Fran is licensed to practice law in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. Since 1995, he has specialized in representing condominium communities, associations, and co-ops. Fran leads McGovern Legal Services, an 11-attorney law firm dedicated solely to representing condominiums, community associations, and co-ops. And don't forget, on the first Friday of every month, Fran hosts First Fridays with Fran, an online Zoom forum where Fran will lead discussions on current community association issues. Then following Fran, we have Kevin Oliver from G&C Electronics speaking on flow control for people counting for clubhouses and community centers. Kevin Oliver is an internationally known business executive and professional security consultant. He is an expert in the fields of security management, integrated security design, construction, and property management and development. He specializes in his organizational business structure and security design on most commercial property types. He consults with business owners and managers, insurance agencies, and government agencies on how to reduce risk and increase operational flow. I would now like to turn it over to Fran. Welcome, Fran.
Thanks a lot, Ange. Hi, everyone. Nice to, well, I can't see you because we're in the web format today, but usually I can see you. I can see some of your names. I can see a lot of managers and homeowner board members out there, a couple attorneys out there. It's thank you so much for participating and coming to see Kevin and I. So I'm going to go over some things real quick. This is not going to be a collection seminar, but we're going to take 15, 20 minutes and just talk about some things that we're seeing, I think, across the industry, and some things I think that we can anticipate. So the first thing is good news. Good news. So the good news is most association collections are doing very well. So as most of you know, we have collection accounts all over the state. We represent associations from Cape May County all the way up to Sussex County. And I would say virtually every association that we work with, their collections and arrearages are far better than they have been, I would say, in the past 10 years, which is fantastic. That's great. And that combined with the COVID restrictions being lightened every day and the sun shining, even though we got a lot of rain and cold over the weekend, all positive. So I think everyone should be positive about this, but also think about the future when it comes to collections, because as we know, there is always a time when the party is over. And right now, like I said, most associations are in a position where their cash flow is doing well. The assessments are being paid, and you don't have to rely on the attorneys very much to collect huge amounts of money like we did in 2008, 9, 10, 11, et cetera. So for those of you who remember, back in March of 2020, we were very, very concerned that the cash flow streams of the association would stop immediately. And that hasn't happened, which is a great thing. But we also have to keep in mind that as the economy continues to proceed, just as there are always up times, there are going to be down times. So one of the things that we're telling our clients is move quickly on accounts that do become delinquent. So move quickly. So usually in most associations, the management letter, right? Second management late letter, and then the next 30 days goes to the lawyer for the attorney collection letter. So move quickly. Do not let sums accrue. So even if your association only has 1 or 2 accounts, make sure management letter, late letter goes to the lawyer, because the higher the account gets, the more difficult it is to collect. So in addition, think about this. And I've talked to a lot of you, some of you, have seen me online every first Friday talking about this as well, which is if you are going to have a budget deficit, think about dealing with that now. Okay, think about dealing with that now, because 6 months from now, people will say, what snow? We didn't have any snow. What COVID? COVID, what? Why would we be getting a special assessment now? Or why would we be jacking our budget now because of COVID? You never told us about that. So if you're anticipating a significant budget deficit, think about either adjusting your budget or passing special assessments now to soften the blow. What you don't want to have to do is a year from now have to sell the concept to your people of, well, golly, we were way behind because of snow and because of COVID compliance and opening the pools, et cetera. So think about that now. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and we talked about this last March, is be reasonable with settlement agreements and forbearance agreements. I don't think judges are going to be particularly happy with associations where they're trying to slam dunk the unit owners immediately out of the gate once COVID is over. So even though you have to proceed with the collection process quickly, you should also proceed reasonably. So for those of you who've seen me over the past year, we've done template settlement agreements, template forbearance agreements. Think about being reasonable, things about payment over time, perhaps payment over COVID time. So if COVID lasted 15 months, perhaps paying the arrearage plus the regular assessments to make it current over a period of a year or a period of 15 months, that might be a reasonable solution as long as the association can support the cash flow. Adjusting late fees. So late fees are typically not part of your regular revenue stream. So it's typically easy to settle a case if you can work through the late fee, either a write-off or a write-down to get a settlement. In addition, those types of settlement and forbearance agreements, as if you are in court already and you could have a default provision that allows you to get judgment if they don't comply, it saves you huge attorney fees, right? Because if there's a breach in the settlement agreement, the attorney can just apply for judgment once there's a breach, and you save quite a bit on attorney fees. So for those of you who haven't been through the process, we do money judgment actions, which is we get a judgment against the person, and then we try to get the person's assets. So that's bank accounts, wage executions, etc. The other alternative is a foreclosure action, right? So the foreclosure action is putting a lien on the home and then foreclosing on the home. What is the wrinkle in COVID world and post-COVID world? Well, with respect to money judgment actions, if the association gets a judgment, the association has to keep in mind that not only is there have payments been made to people with federal funds and state funds for COVID relief, the laws, both federal and state, typically exempt those payments from levy by collection attorneys like me. So even though someone may have gotten COVID payments for, say, $1,500 and $1,500 and then $500, whatever, for their children, et cetera, if the association has a judgment for $20,000 or $10,000 or what have you, and levies on a person's bank account, and that person can show that those funds were proceeds from state or federal COVID aid, they would be typically exempt from execution. So you have to be careful about that when you hit a bank account and the debtor says, no, 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 they were COVID relief proceeds. So you have to be careful. That's unusual. There are exempt funds already under the regular day-to-day statutes, but COVID proceeds are specially exempt. Okay, COVID relief proceeds. Also keep in mind that as we go back online with collections and more assertive, that you should still be thinking about the big question from 2008, 9, and 10 is the unit vacant? Is the unit occupied, right? Because if the unit is not vacant, if the unit is not occupied, the unit is vacant, we start thinking about things like, can we get a quitclaim deed? Can we get a rent receiver? Is the unit owner alive? Has the unit owner died? Ask these real questions that are real world questions for collection attorneys. Where can we properly serve them? How can we find out the next of kin, or the next of kin, the children in Arizona, Southern California, what have you? And where do we go from here? Unfortunately, and I think that this is a symptom of COVID, we're seeing a number of associations change management companies. And I don't see a thread that's a common thread other than I think some people are just so annoyed with COVID that some of them are taking it out on the management companies and they're doing a knee-jerk reaction to that and changing managers or changing management companies. The key to that with respect to collections is make sure you get the prior books and records of the prior management company, because if you don't, it is very hard and often impossible for the collection attorneys to properly document the file so that they can avoid running afoul of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. As collection attorneys and debt collectors, we have an obligation to properly verify the amounts outstanding. And some of these, especially smaller associations, are making changes in their management to other smaller management companies that may not have been around a long time. And their documentation with respect to account histories has not always been up to snuff as we'd like it. Keep in mind that we don't do much landlord-tenant work right in the association field, because although some associations have tenants, we don't see a lot of that. We don't see a lot of associations with tenants. There is still a moratorium with respect to ejecting people from their home. Okay, there is, and that right now that goes through mid-August, so that goes August 15th, 16th, right, when it's set to expire, the moratorium on evictions. But there's legislation pending that is proposing to extend that through January 1st of 2022. So if you're an association that has ownership or control of units and you have tenants in there that are not paying, keep in mind that you won't be able to get them out of the unit unless there are some extenuating circumstances. It looks like if this legislation goes through until January of 2022. But also keep in mind that if you are going to pursue a landlord-tenant action, you can still pursue it. So you can still go forward, file your filings, get your judgment, but you're not going to be able to get the tenant out. But better to start the process so that when January, February rolls around, you can get them out. So the eviction moratorium remains in place. One thing that somebody asked me recently is, can we still suspend privileges if people are not in good standing? The answer is yes, of course. There is no moratorium with respect to suspending privileges. Obviously, you have to talk to your own association attorney regarding things like towing in particular, towing you have to be very careful about. You have to have proper signage, you have to have proper towing contracts, etc. So be careful and speak to your association attorney about that. But things like uses of the amenities, the gym, the pool, etc., to the extent they're opening. And by the way, most associations we work with are opening the pool. The vast majority of them are opening the pools, opening the gyms right now. They're trying to be safe, but they're doing that. You can suspend privileges, and that's another way that you can really save attorney fees in the collection world. So we're coming up. Also, somebody, I don't know if anyone got my email earlier in the week. So a couple things are happening. And Ange, I'm just going to mention that George Greatrex put out a memo earlier in the week that there is an immunity bill pending that is supposed to go before the Senate this coming Friday, right, on 2 days. So for those of you on the call who are not aware of it, Senate Bill 3584, I just wanted to do a little shout out for that. That is pending, and it's supposed to, I think it's scheduled to go before a vote of the full Senate on this Friday. So if you do take a few minutes, and it looks like a bipartisan bill, it's sponsored by Linda Greenstein and also Shirley Turner, but then some other number of other people have signed on to that. So if you have some time, reach out to your state senator and speak on behalf of that immunity legislation, because I think it will really take a load. It's not collection related, but I think it's very timely, and it will take a load off your associations if we can help support the LAC and help support this bill to get immunity for COVID-related issues in the association world. What else is going on? So the state of emergency is scheduled to be over in about 30 days. So the governor has signaled that come, let's see, July, I guess, 14th, I don't have the exact date in front of me, that he thinks that he will not renew the state of emergency, which is a good thing, right? Because a state of emergency is always bad because it violates the checks and balances of a government that has divided purposes, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, and it gloms all the power to the executive. So the governor has signaled he's going to let that expire, but keep in mind the Senate, I'm sorry, not the Senate, there is, yes, the Senate, Bill 3820 is providing that the governor, even though he lets certain emergency powers expire, the governor will still have some remaining power if this legislation passes, that Senate Bill 3820. Now, I'm not talking about the immunity stuff that we want to support. That's 3584. Senate Bill 3820, and I'm not saying to support or oppose this, it's just something to be aware of. What it basically provides is that if the governor lets the emergency expire, the governor will still be able to exercise certain emergency powers. And that's something to think about just with respect to state and federal governments. How long should that go on? So it's just something for all of you to think about when you're thinking about governance in New Jersey, is how long should the governor be able to continue certain executive orders and executive powers and functions. So that bill is pending also, and that's Senate Bill 3820 if you want to take a look at it. And anyone can take a look at these bills merely by Googling New Jersey legislature and plugging in the bill number, and you can also see the list of your representatives there. Okay. Angie, do you have any questions? I'm at 12:20 right now, so.
Yeah, so actually there's one question. Can you share any other information on the foreclosure option?
So the foreclosure option is, it's similar to a mortgage foreclosure, right? So you record a lien, file a foreclosure complaint in the Chancery Division, and very similar to a mortgage foreclosure, you would ultimately, meaning the association would ultimately take title to the property. And usually what has happened is the association would rent that property out and collect the cash flow until the mortgage company forecloses on its lien. So keep in mind that an association foreclosure does not typically get you clear title to the unit. And a lot of board members misunderstand that. A lot of managers misunderstand that. They say, that's great. The unit's worth $350,000. If we have a $2,500 lien and we foreclose it, we are going to get a $350,000 home. The answer is you'll get title to it, but the title will still be encumbered by the first and second mortgages. So you won't be able to sell it outright and you won't make that money. What most people do is use a foreclosure as a tool of getting people out who refuse to pay, forcing them to pay, or if they ultimately don't pay at all, renting it out prior to the time the mortgage company goes in there and takes the unit back itself.
Okay. As far as suspending privileges, are there any specific steps that should be followed?
So in today's world, ADR is really the kind of rule of thumb, right? It's the gold standard, if you will. Judges don't want to see these cases. So judges want to see that people were offered ADR. And as you know, CAI New Jersey has an excellent ADR mediation program that we use pretty regularly, and I also volunteer for. So what you don't want to do is do crazy things. Don't offer ADR, start towing cars and doing draconian things to people, especially without offering ADR, because you're going to wind up in front of a judge somewhere and the judge is going to say, well, did you offer them ADR? And the association is going to say no, and the judge is not going to be happy with that. So if you have a case, he's going to kick your case and send it back to ADR. If the homeowner sues the association for failure to offer ADR, the judge may impose other remedies. So you do have to be very cautious, and I think most judges in today's world know that ADR is kind of the touchstone for association issues.
Okay, one more question came in. There has been a legal opinion on, like, say, liability legislation that boards would still be held personally responsible. What is your interpretation of that?
So I haven't seen an interpretation of personal liability, except typically, so most governing documents, the bylaws, et cetera, provide that the board members shall be identified, defended, and held harmless unless they are reckless or they've done purposeful wrongful acts. That's where things get funky. So there are some associations out there, we don't deal with them, that in the case of COVID have just blown off the regulations. Said, you know what, we're going to do whatever we want. We're going to open the pool. We're not going to clean things. We're not going to worry about masks, all that other stuff. And this was months ago. So their board members expose themselves to personal liability because it's specifically provided in the association's governing documents under the exculpation provisions and the indemnification provisions that the board members cannot be acting in bad faith, recklessly, or purposefully wrongfully. So if you're on a board that is looking to do things that they know they shouldn't do, the answer is don't do them. And be aware that if you're going to go forward and do them anyway, you are risking personal liability because the governing documents won't cover you. And generally speaking, the association's D&O policy will also not cover you. So you will be very jammed up if you engage in reckless conduct, acting in bad faith, and do purposeful wrongful acts.
Okay. And we have people interested in your Friday webinar. So how can they find out about that?
Oh yeah, just you could shoot me an email and we would just put you on the list. And Yeah, we just send out an email blast, and we do it every Friday, first Friday of every month at 4. This is going to be 4 o'clock this Friday, and then starting in July, it's going to be at noon on Friday, because too many people, and believe it or not, are doing property inspections on Friday afternoons in the summer.
Mhm.
so, so they are not around. They are not around to attend because they are carefully inspecting their property
Yes,
on those
I'm
Friday
sure.
afternoons.
Okay, all
And so
right,
yeah,
great.
just shoot me an email and we'll put you on the list and you'll get a
All
list.
right. All right,
Thank you.
those are all the questions we have right now. If anyone has any further questions, then we'll come back to Fran at the end. Thank you, Fran.
Thanks a lot, Ange.
Okay.
You go ahead.
All right, Kevin, you're up. I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Holliver of G&C Electronics. Welcome, Kevin.
Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well today. Wonderful weekend we went past. I'm glad that to see that, it is the season that everything's starting to open for all the communities, the pools, the clubhouses. Post-COVID, this is the weekend, right? Everybody starts to come through. We start seeing all the people come into the pools, start using the activities more outdoors. Post-COVID, things are still in question, I guess. It's nice to hear from Fran that things are going to be opening up more and more. Come 30 days, hopefully all the restrictions are lifted as per the state, and we can kind of go from there. But what I'd like to talk about today, and the questions come up even often post-COVID and now in COVID, of flow control through the condominium association, clubhouses, pools, other amenities, and kind of what we can do about it. And also how we can even see who's there, amount of people, and really do some people counting to keep our social distance in place now that COVID's in place. But even prior to that, dealing with the pool sections of who's really allowed in the pool, who's allowed in the clubhouse at certain times of the day. And I'd like to go through a few of those items and what we can kind of do about it. One of the best things that we can do, a lot of the clubhouses already have some kind of access control system in their clubhouse. Some do not, and they have nothing at all. It's still on lock and key, and they open it at certain times of the day and go from there. Some of the options that we do have out there is really the ability to put in systems and equipment, whether it's managed on-site or off-site, and control who can kind of come into your different amenities, especially the clubhouse itself and or the pool. With those systems in place, I mean, the majority of the time, management companies and board members think of it as just letting people in and out and opening doors and closing doors at certain times of the day. Those are all scheduled events that can happen, and we can actually either have that on-site managed where you're controlling it yourself and setting up those timelines and having it automatically open when you need to and close. And off-site managed also is very similar, but then you have the ability to have other companies and entities actually help you manage those pieces of the puzzle. With that equipment in place, what you can do now is there's other items that that can be used in conjunction with the existing equipment. Some of that is actually the people counting abilities and the amount of control that you can have to letting certain people come in at certain times, or even the amount of people at any given time. Video cameras and cameras that are also in place can also be added with some other options that weren't really available to the condominium world for a long period of time. And generally it's priced out. It just becomes too expensive. But in recent years, it's actually come down significantly to where you can add video analytics to your existing camera systems. With those video analytics, and video analytics is just a fancy way of saying smart video or intelligent video. We can use some of the exact same cameras that you have currently in place and use those to add software in the background to be able to give different information to management and other of who's really coming in and out of your amenities. We can count how many people are in there. From there, we can actually connect that to the access control system and limit the amount, or give at least notification or alerts to management or other, to where you have too many people in a room or too many people in an area. We can actually and other pieces of software and apps to have a huge variety of applications for the management company to be able to just help ease the flow of people inside their amenities. What's nice now is that it's actually become into a price set to where condo communities can actually afford to get some of these services that they just weren't available in the past. They were priced out. It just didn't kind of feed a budget need. Some of the things that they actually have out there now is, it seemed futuristic in the past. Yes, they do have it in larger commercial entities and larger commercial companies, but we have facial recognition systems now that we can use. And we've actually deployed them at several different condominium associations in their clubhouses to help with the flow control and to help with some of these other restrictions and requirements that are needed. We have facial recognition software and devices that are connecting to existing access control systems, and we're using them to identify if you have your mask on or not. It's taking temperature as people are walking in. And as that's actually happening, you can then set up the parameters of how you want to actually manage your community from that point. So for instance, you might have a situation where you have a facial recognition system in your main lobby of your clubhouse. As people are entering in, it's actually taking their temperature as they're walking by. It's seeing whether or not they're allowed even in the clubhouse or not, based on your restrictions and your accessibility within the timelines of the software. And it's actually it can tell whether or not you have a mask on or not. All these options are available to you, and they can be turned on and off as needed. So as restrictions in the state change or requirements in the state change, you can turn those systems on and off as needed, but still run your daily access control system as you would need even pre-COVID. So you might have a situation where instead of handing out access control cards and or badges, it eliminates all of that. Some of the highest costs in access control is actually the consumable piece. So it's the access control badges themselves and the cards and the key fobs. It becomes a tremendous cost. And if you can eliminate some of those pieces, and then you don't have the consumable anymore, and you're doing strictly facial recognition for your clubhouse, it eliminates a huge cost and actually brings down the overall burden and the ongoing burden of the actual maintenance of the system. Some of the other items that are out there that can be used, the pool comes up with us every year, obviously usually about a month or two prior to this, but because of a lot of the pools opening late, it made it a little tougher this year, and everybody's just still trying to figure out what's really going on with COVID and the restrictions. There are actually other apps and software packages out there, even outside of the security world. Some of the larger pool companies actually have some of them that are readily available. Amenity Link would be one of them. Others that we even provide and other security integrators provide are apps that can kind of replace some of the personnel that you would need rather than a lifeguard. Because obviously with the changes in the laws just over the last few years, lifeguards are restricted to just the life safety services within the pool, and not the management of the actual pool. So I know that's become a big hot point for quite a few management companies of how they're going to do that and deal with that. A lot just let it self-manage itself, but others really want to really maintain the control of the pool and who's coming in and out. We've had quite a few associations that have expressed over the last few years, and now especially with COVID, people from outside of the association coming in and using the amenities, where outside gyms were closing down, but meanwhile other gyms within the associations and other amenities were open, and they're coming in from outside of the community, and how to kind of deal with that flow and the restriction of outside influence coming into the community. Again, it comes down to really how you want to manage your community itself and the equipment that you can have and put in. Some of the things that you do need to look at and do need to pay attention to is the actual restrictions and the local code restrictions of how you need to implement some of these devices. It is licensed equipment that needs to be put in, as per the national and local codes. Some of the older associations with the clubhouses that have been around for quite a while, some of them still don't even have fire alarm systems in them. Most of the general public wouldn't even realize that one of the codes in New Jersey is that you have to have a fire alarm system in your building to have an access control system installed. So it becomes a stumbling block, just kind of going through some of the basic needs and falling within the code restrictions. But overall, things that weren't available to the condominium associations in just in the past 5 to 6 years have now come down significantly and are really making a great stride in being able to control and be able to just figure out who's flowing through your doors every day and who you're really being liable for. Angela, how am I doing on time? Okay. Oh, I still got plenty of time, right?
Yeah, you have plenty of time.
All right.
You're
So
fine.
one of the other things that I'd like to touch base on is actually the video. All right. I get a lot of questions on, can we use our existing video? Can we use our existing cameras? Do we need to run all new cable? All those things are questions that generally got to be assessed on site to see what you currently have and what you're currently using. But in most cases, it generally can. All the equipment that has come out over the past few years are hybrid systems. So you can integrate a lot of your older systems and older cameras, the existing cabling, all that can be used depending on the size and the quality of resolution that you're really looking for in the cameras that you're currently putting in. The nice thing about it, as I was talking about before, is now the introduction of video analytics. The video analytics let us do so many different things, everything from being able to watch certain equipment within a building so we can know if somebody's actually moving something, and it sends an alert out via email or text. Other things as far as just social distancing, we actually can put in place in the video analytics, if too many people are in one specific room, we can actually have it kick onto a relay and put a voice message out to please, social distance yourself. There's so many different options that can happen now that just weren't available before, especially at the price point. A lot of the larger corporations, and I'll give you a scenario of even the box stores, the large box stores that you go in every day, from the Walmarts to the Targets to the Home Depots. If you notice in the background, as people start to gather in certain areas, you'll see the recordings or hear the recordings come on of managing your social distance and please maintain your distance within your groups. Those pre-recorded messages aren't coming on just randomly. Their video in those areas are actually picking up too many people too close to each other, and it's subconsciously there to remind you to start to distance yourself. So all those things are now available, again, for the condo world. We use it every day. We do a lot of off-site management, which definitely helps the property managers specifically for adding people, adding cards, managing the database, and actually being able to help them open doors, close doors at any given time, rather than it's just a schedule. Especially with what's been happening, in our world, we're coming into hurricane season also. So the different events that happen in the scenario of a hurricane, where different occurrences such as even lightning strikes happen, we can actually open the doors to get emergency medical people in. We can open doors remotely at any given time, not only just us, but we can give the ability to the managers to do that as well. We got any questions at this point, Angela? Or?
Yeah, we have a question from Fran. Should our video cameras also record audio?
All right, that is a touchy question. I generally do not recommend to record audio unless you're a government entity such as a police department or other. It starts to fall under the wiretapping laws. So I tend to not require or recommend it at all. Once somebody pushes the subject where they really want to record voice, then I really end up referring them to their attorneys, because the correct signage needs to be up everywhere. Everybody else needs to be aware of what's going on. Currently, what ends up happening is the wiretapping laws in New Jersey, one of the people in the video need to be aware of the recording happening at that given time. All right. So, you may have the signage up, you may have everything that you need legally up, and you should be okay, but it's still a touchy subject. So the scenario where it is in like such places like a clubhouse, if you have 2 or 3 unit owners that are using their amenities and management or somebody else isn't in there and there doesn't happen to be the signage in that area specifically, it starts to get a little touchy. I tend to encourage not to use any of the audio recording. I generally only put it in police stations, courtrooms, government, municipal buildings of that nature. Because there is a large list of things that do need to be done, even for the employees. Generally, when you hire a new employee, you're going to have a sign off that they realize that they're being recorded both on video and audio. So it gets a little touchy. I try to stay away from it.
Okay, and must the association produce a video recording if subpoenaed to do so?
That would be an attorney question more than me, but generally, if you're
Fran?
subpoenaed, you're going to need to produce
You
that
want to
video.
answer that one?
Guys, okay, I'm unmuted, sorry. So yeah, I agree with Kevin, absolutely. On the first question that I wanted to make with Kevin, because we work with Kevin on a lot of sites, is yeah, the video recording camera should not have the sound turned on. And Kevin can speak to this. A lot of cameras come, my understanding, built in with audio recording capability.
Mhm.
And even if the vendor does not turn the audio on, some association members are savvy enough to be able to turn that function on. And I've been involved in at least one case already where an association was nefariously recording conversations of unit owners in the hallway when they shouldn't have been. So yes, I agree with Kevin. The answer is no, we shouldn't be doing that. But you do have to be careful, because a lot of cameras have that function and they don't realize it. So that's one. On the subpoena thing, again, Kevin and I think I've run into this stuff before. People don't realize that as the association is making records and recordings and pictures and glomming information, when Kevin had mentioned some of these advanced tools for facial recognition, things like that, tracking individuals, et cetera, keep in mind that generally, as Kevin said, that material has to be produced in response to a subpoena, right? So you're making the record. Be careful what you wish for, because we have been subpoenaed and notice requirements to produce certain things that unit owners may not be so happy about the association having to produce. So for example, Mary and Joe are going through a nasty divorce, and they're married though, and they live in the association, and someone's, wants the video recordings of the gatehouse when, Mary was home and some guy named Bob was visiting her, right? Or Joe was home and some lady named Mary was visiting him, right? So you have to be careful in divorce cases, estate cases, et cetera. When you make the records, be careful, what you wish for. One of the other things that Kevin and I run into, I think, a fair amount is what signage do you put up if video recording is in process? So one of the risky things is, there's kind of standard signs you can buy online that say video monitoring in process. No, you don't want video monitoring in process, because very, very, very few, if any, associations actually video monitor anything. And video monitoring in process gives people the impression that there's somebody on the other end back at Kevin's office watching the monitor, and they can call 911 if someone jumps you in the laundry room. So you have to be careful the wording for your signs. So you may be able to say video recording in process, but you have to stay away from things like monitoring, right, Kevin? Because you don't have banks of people monitoring these things. Right?
Yeah, 100%. There was actually a case in New Jersey, and obviously it's always a case in New Jersey, right? It was with dummy cameras. So they were putting up dummy cameras along a building, down an alleyway, and they didn't have the signage, which that was irrelevant at the time, but you're creating a false sense of security. And the scenario there was they were putting up dummy cameras. A woman who worked in the area literally walked 3 or 4 blocks out of her way to get to work every day because she wanted to walk in front of those cameras so that she felt safer. Something very bad happened to her. Luckily, she lived, but it was not a good scenario. They went to pull the video. There was no video because they were dummy cameras. They sued the entity because they put dummy cameras up, and it gave her that false sense of security. She literally changed her route because of it. And that's kind of what Fran's going at. And that same scenario is, as long as you have cameras up and the intent was to record, you're fine. If they're not working at the time, that's okay. You're not in a situation then. But the signage of the video monitoring piece, you're basically saying that there's an action happening. Somebody's actively looking at it, and that's not the case at all. And Fran is 100% right. I would say maybe a very small handful of associations that have guards that are there specifically to watch cameras around their association.
Kevin, could I ask one other thing while we're at it? Is do your systems, and I think I know the answer to the question, in terms of debtors, can you disable fobs in your system, et cetera, when people, so that they can't use the gym, et cetera, or access the clubhouse?
100%. Yeah, when we do the offsite management, we do it to where the managers just send us a list of who's available, who's not, and where. And we can turn it on, off, and set timelines. Even the other way, for the betterment of the association, if you're looking to rent out the clubhouse for certain time periods, we can turn it on for a certain period of time and have it clock off, and not give them access after a certain time period too.
Right.
Yeah, that's a regular day event. We do that all day long. Managers do that with their own equipment on site too. Just a matter of managing it.
All right, Kevin, anything on code restrictions for the access control?
Yeah, I was touching on it before. I'm going to talk specifically at least the tri-state area. You have your national codes, but then you have the state codes also. For access control specifically, you have to have an active fire alarm system in your clubhouse so that you can even install an access control system. So if you're looking to do any type of access control to your clubhouse, please be aware that if you do not have a fire alarm system in place, you are going to need one by code. I've run into quite a few associations where they would love to put access control on their building, but they just don't have the basic fire alarm system, just for simple a matter, it was built 30 years ago and it wasn't required. Sometimes they tend to go around and they do it anyway, but eventually the fire marshal is going to come in and wonder why and how. It falls right back to the NFPA life safety codes for your egress codes. So it is something to be aware of.
Okay, I believe those are all the questions that we have. Anything else either of you like to close it out with before we let everyone go?
I'm fine. I just hope we had a really nice, beautiful summer and everyone gets back together and we all see each other face to face and we can be happy and positive this summer and we all get back to school in the fall. Thank you for attending.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will be sharing the contact information for both Fran and Kevin with all of the attendees. So please feel free to email them. And thank you so much for attending.
Have a great
Bye,
day.
everyone.
Have a good day, all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ange.